you think that's good, you should see something else Obama did. Gog and Magog. Gog from the land of Magog. What is that? We know in the end of time, Gog from the land of Magog will war against Israel and against Jerusalem. Okay? And that war will be a very difficult war. What does that mean? Why is there a Gog and Magog? What does it mean? It all starts from Egypt. What Gog and Magog really is, it's a second attempt or resurgence of evil to try to destroy the Jews. That's what Kriyas Yamsuf is. You know, all of a sudden, the Egyptians realized they were finished, and all of a sudden they said, why did we let the Jews go? And they ran after them by Yamsuf. So that was a second attempt to try to destroy them. You see, that's Kriyas Yamsuf. That's the concept of Gog and Magog. When the nations of the world realize that they are losing, they're losing their grip on the world, they will go against Israel, you see, because they realize that their way of living is dying. That's really what it is. A resurgence, it's an attempt of evil to regroup and to try to conquer Israel. But that will be what? It will be against Israel, the nation of Israel, and also and Yerushalayim. Now it's very interesting, very interesting. Who is Gog and Magog? Interesting. Gog and Magog is what's called flexible. God can designate who he wants to be Gog and Magog. But Gog and Magog can only happen, one, if it's against the Jews in general. Two, if the Mashiach is alive at that time. Because it's really a messianic war. That's really what it is. It's a war after the Mashiach has come. So basically, for Gog and from the land of Magog to happen, basically it has to be against the Jews in general, and it has to be with the Mashiach basically alive, which is interesting. Now, we understand its historical origin, but it's interesting. Chizkiyahu, the Melech Yehuda, right? Sancherib made war against Chizkiyahu, right? He surrounded Jerusalem with 185,000 soldiers, unheard of. So Chizkiyahu was a tremendous tzaddik. He said to God, listen, I don't have the power to stop this. It's ridiculous, you know? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to sleep. You take care of them. I mean, what a strategy, right? I can't do this. So Chizkiyahu went to sleep, surrounded by 185,000 soldiers that were going to kill everybody, right? The next morning, the Jews walked out. 185,000 people died. And there is no disease in the world that can kill with that speed. Even Ebola can't do this. You see? That was a miracle which is beyond comprehension. So Chizkiyahu should have sang Shira, like Kriyas Yamsuf, Shira, but he didn't, for whatever reason. So the Chazal tell us that God wanted to make Sancherib Goik that would war against Chizkiyahu, and Chizkiyahu was the Mashiach, and that would be against Mashiach and Klal Yisrael. But since Chizkiyahu did not sing Shira, God took away that position. It's over with. It has to continue. He almost was Mashiach, right? So what do we see? That the concept of Gog and Magog, which is our origin in Kriyas Yamsuf, right, splitting the Red Sea, that could have happened with Chizkiyahu, and it didn't, so we see there's a flexibility. Okay, when's the next time? A lot of interesting times, but let me tell you something very interesting. What is critical to know, what the concept of the next time, the war of Gog and Magog, God divided into three parts. That's right. There are three events that is Gog and Magog. And there's a reason for that. Because the war of Gog and Magog is very bad. Because Chazal say in Sanhedrin that only one or two families of Jews will survive that war. And not only that, but the Mashiach himself, which is Mashiach ben Yosef, will die. Okay. So what God did is very interesting. I'll tell you, don't worry. That's the bad news. The bad news is that one or two families of Jews will survive, and Mashiach ben Yosef himself dies, which is like incredible, right? That's the bad news. The good news is that God changed the plan. What does that mean? What he did is he took the war of Gog and Magog, remember, which is the war of Gog against the Jewish nation, and also a Mashiach, basically. And what he did is he made it into three sections. The first real war of Gog is Germany in World War I. Germany is Amalek, without getting into that. Germany is really a Molech. That's who they are at that time, certainly. Okay? World War I is the war of Gog and Magog, part one, you see. And they destroyed 1,500 communities of Jews. It was terrible what they did to the Jews in World War I. World War II is the second part of Gog. But this time it was Gog himself who was Hitler, Yamach Shemoy. Germany under Hitler is Gog. In many ways, you don't realize something. Hitler is a messianic figure. He's the Messiah of the Satan. Because a messianic figure is nothing more than somebody appointed to create a radical change. That's who Hitler was, a Messiah, or satanic. And Hitler, his whole objective in World War II was to kill the Jews. That's really what he wanted. He was obsessed with destroying the Jews. And therefore, World War II fulfilled the prophecy of only one or two families in a city will survive. You see that? So World War II, which is unfortunate, the Holocaust, but it absorbed the terrible decree of the war of Gog against the Jews. But I want to show you something. The obsession of this man. At the end of the war, 1944, 45 or whatever, the generals came over to Hitler. This idea is brought down in the book, William Shirer, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, which I once read. It's like 1,400 pages. But there were many interesting things that he said. One of them was the following, which was incredible. He said this. He said that the generals at the end of the war came to Hitler, and they said, we're losing the war. And they were losing. Really losing, and so on, So the Hitler said, what's the problem? Why are we losing? So they said, because we're not bringing troops to the front. We need railroad cars. So what happened to the railroad cars? Because you're shipping all the Jews to the concentration camps. That's why. What do you want? Instead of taking troops to the front, you're taking the Jews and you're using them to ship the Jews to the concentration camps. You see? So what we need is to cut it out. Stop sending the Jews, to prioritize the fact that you want to kill all the Jews, and maybe you want to save Germany. And remember what Hitler said, that the Third Reich would be a 1,000-year Reich. That's his statement, right? You know what Hitler told the generals? He told them, get lost. It's astounding. Hitler placed the priority of killing the Jews greater than winning the war. Incredible. In fact, that shows you that Hitler is what? Is one of the greatest traitors of Germany. Because he allowed Germany to lose. It was more important for him to destroy the Jews than the Germany should win the war. That's incredible. Hitler is an incredible traitor, betrayer of Germany. Why? What was in this man? Because that's Gog. And World War II was the major emphasis of the war of Gog against the Jews. And that's the second thing, second phase. The third phase is Obama. What Obama did was incredible. And it's not just Obama, it's the UN. Let me show you what this guy did, Along comes the UN, 3 months ago, and says, we want to tell you, Yehuda, Shomron, Judah and Samaria, and Jerusalem is occupied territory. Right? This is the UN, right? Now, the gematria of Gog and Magog is 70. And there are 70 nations of the world, even though the UN is 193, but there are 70 spiritual roots. And there are only 70 nations, because many nations are really one root, like Austria and Germany is really the same, and so on. So there are 70 roots, right? 70 nations, according to Kabbalah, and in fact, even 70 nations by the time of Noach, whatever, and so on, So the gematria of Gog and Magog is 70. So Gog takes the nations of the world against the Jews, you see. So what happens? Along comes the UN. It's just astounding what they did. And they say that Israel is occupied territory, mostly actually, Yehud and Shomron, and Jerusalem. Now, okay, you want to say Yehud and Shomron is occupied, which is absolute nonsense for many reasons, which I'll say. But can you tell me how in the world you could say that Jerusalem is occupied territory? Why? Think about this. Jerusalem and the whole Eretz Yisrael, biblically, is in the Bible, right? That it's ours. Not only historical, It's historical. We have, it's ours historically, the time of the Romans. You see? Legally. Why? Because there is no such thing as a Palestinian nation, so how can we occupy them? There's no such thing as a legal nation called Palestine. So what do you mean you occupy them? There is no occupation of them. It doesn't exist. So what are they talking about? So not only the League of Nations gave us Israel, which was accepted by the UN. I mean, every which way you cut it. And not only that, in the New Testament, it says that Yeshu overturned the money changes in the temple. Their own Bible says that Jerusalem belongs. It talks about the temple, that the Jews had that. We're talking about, and we're talking about the whole Western civilization is Christian. So are they psychotic? How could they say that? Which is astounding. But they said it anyway. Why? Because God said, I'm in a rush. I need to fulfill the prophecy of Gog from the land of Magog now. So what I'm going to do is, they're crazy even for saying that the occupied territory is Yehud and Shomron. But I need to get them to include Jerusalem or else it won't be Gog. You see? Because Gog got to go against Jerusalem also. So I'm going to exaggerate or emphasize their psychosis, right? And make sure that they will condemn and call occupied territory Jerusalem. It's impossible. Yet they did it anyway. Why? Because that edict of the UN is Gog and Magog. That's what Obama did for us. And we have to thank the guy. You see? Because he abstained. And because he abstained, he allowed the Gog and Magog, because they think about that. What is Gog and Magog? It's the whole world against the Jew, right? It doesn't mean the whole world's not going to war against the Jews. It's the UN that represents the whole world against the Jews. That's Gog and Magog. So what the Moshe did is astounding. He actually allowed the prophecy of Gog and Magog to happen. Wow. Do we owe Obama Hakor Satoiv? It's just absolutely incredible. I mean, I'm telling you, Mashiach is going to come and talk to me and say, Yashikoyach. Because without you, I could not have come. But that's so look at what Obama's done. Diminished Esav, Edom, America, and make it the laughing stock of the world, which of course a Muslim will do. Empower the Arabs. It's obvious he loves Arabs. He's always has a double standard. Even when they're destroying the Jews, it's still the Arabs that are the main thing. Iran, he called Iran, gave them nuclear weapons, and he's designated the end of time. It's astounding, according to that medrash. Not only that, he has enabled the UN to become Gog and Magog. So therefore it comes out that the end of Gog and Magog is not a war, because really it should have been a military war. But that was absorbed in the Holocaust. And that's why the Holocaust was so severe. It was a second part of Gog and Magog, but it was the worst part. But after that, all it is basically confrontation of the world against the Jews, you see. So he's done that. But also what Obama has done, which is very interesting, is he has enabled Trump to become president. I don't know if you realize that. Now, wait a minute. Who says that was good? Next week, you'll find out what that's all about. But right now, take it from me. He has enabled Trump. Why? Because Obama has done a terrible job with America. It's just terrible in so many different ways. Okay, that's number one. So therefore, Hillary, right? Hillary's incredible. I'll talk about Hillary next week. But but Hillary is really the continuation of Obama, you see. So what Obama's done is by allowing Hillary to take on his agenda, ultimately everybody got sick and tired of what Obama's doing, and if Hillary can continue, who needs her, right? And there's an enormous thrust against anti-establishment, and that's what they failed to recognize, that Obama has forgotten man, the common man and so on, so he lost. Obama is really the reason why Trump is there. You see? And by the way, the reason why Obama became president, because also Hillary, it was really an anti-establishment vote. They hated Bush, and they hated Hillary, so all of a sudden they picked this guy, right, with a resume, right, of community organizer, right? He became president, you see? So therefore, this is what Obama has done. And I want to tell you something. The Rebbe is going to destroy that man for many reasons.